Okay. Thank you all for your patience. All right, 7:02. Hopefully, I didn't take that much of your time. We find ourselves, my friends, on Yud Ches Amud Beis, 18b. We're on 18b. And as you can see, since we're just doing the Gemara, we get off easy. So we're going to naturally make some headway into Yud Tes Amud Aleph as well. That way the shear doesn't end within 2 minutes, right? So, okay. In the previous year, we had a machlokis between Abaye and Rava about the following case. So you remember there's a case in the Mishnah in which there's a structure, a building, which is in the shape of a U, so 3 walls, and then it has the achsadra, it has the porch, which is jutting out. Now the porch is not kosher for schach. Even if it's made from inherently kosher material, it's way too thick and it's not going to work. And the Mishnah had said that if the achsadra is less than 4 amos, then we say dofen akuma. But if it's more than 4 amos, what kind of recourse do we have? So this is what we might have. So we said that, you know what? Why don't we okay, I'll just summarize. So Abaye and Rava had a machlokis. What happens if you put these pitzimin? What if, not that you put these pitzimin, to hold up the achsadra, to hold up the porch, there's columns that are holding it up. So can these columns form a wall? So everyone agrees that if there are, at least in this version of the Gemara, we're going to see a different version of the discussion toward the end. Everyone agrees that if there are pitzimin, these columns that are within 3 tefachim of each other, similar to how you have a fence, the bars are all within 3 tefachim, it forms a wall. It can be used for enclosures on Shabbos as well. But they had a debate, what happens when you don't have these walls? So Rava said, you're out of luck. Abaye said that actually we have this principle called Pi Tikra Yori V'Sosem, that the thickness of the upper bar there, which is holding up the schach, can actually, we view it as coming down and enclosing the entire area. Now, you can imagine this is a bit of a tough pill to swallow, so Rava naturally rejects it. And that's where we pick up our discussion in the middle of Yud Ches Amud Beis, Lema Abaye Rava. So what the Gemara does many times is that when you have a machlokis in one generation, we start scratching our heads and saying, wait a minute, wasn't this a dispute that was that happened earlier as well? Or maybe it's at least akin to another machlokis somewhere that we're aware of. So Lema Abaye Rava looked at the Rav Shmuel Kamiflagim. Maybe the machlokis Abaye and Rav are having about whether we could use Pi Tikra Yori V'Sosim, good achis, and pretend that there are these conceptual walls that are coming down. Maybe this is the same machlokis that Shmuel and Rav have in the context of Hilchos Shabbos, right? We do that all the time. It's nothing new. We compare the laws of Shabbos and Sukkah all the time. We have a migu, actually, which we'll talk about in the rush toward the end. So Lema by Rava plugged the Rav Shmuel Kamiflagi. Maybe it's the same machlokis. The Itmar. In the context of Hilchos Shabbos, you want to have an enclosed area, because you have an enclosed area, you can carry in it. Or it's just a yachid. So Achsadra Bebika, let's say you have this kind of structure. You forgive me, I didn't bring my picture Gemara with me, but maybe perhaps ArtScroll maybe provides one for you. So there's you have the same kind of situation where you have that Achsadra, you have that overhang in the valley, meaning just in a general flat area. Rav Amar Mutter Tata Bakula, since it's considered to be enclosed, you could carry around that whole area. Damrina Pi Tikra Yori V'Sosem, which is Abaye Shita. Abaye says that we can view the wall as coming down. Ushmuel Amar Emetalton Ba Elbetan Amos Damrina Pi Tikra Yori V'Sosem. No, you could only carry within 4 amos, meaning, in other words, you're not allowed to carry it. In general, when we say you're not allowed to carry something, it means you're not allowed to carry something more than the 4 amos that you find it in. So, because we don't say Pi Tikra Yori V'Sosem. So it seems really clean right now. It sounds like the machlokes Rav and Abaye in the context of Hilchos Sukkah is really, in principle, the same machlokes of Rav and Shmuel in Hilchos Shabbos. Okay, seems very nice. However, we don't necessarily have to line it up that way. We can make things a little bit more complicated. Now, I'll leave it the Shmuel Kuli Amalo Pligi. Now, it's very clear that according to Shmuel, Abaye is not going to be in line, in step with Shmuel. Shmuel says that we do not say Pitik or Yovisosem in this case in Shabbos. That fits nicely with Rava, and it's against Abaye. No arguments over there. We know where Shmuel stands when it comes to Sukkah. Ki pligi, but perhaps we could still say that both Abaye and Rava would disagree, even within Shitas Rav. Ki pligi but Rav. So Abaye Karav, now Abaye naturally sides with Rav. He's his most obvious ally because they both say Pi Tikra Yori V'Sosem. Rav in Hilchos Shabbos, Abaye in Sukkah. V'Rava Amar Lecha, Akalo Amar Rav Hasam El Demechitzasach Sadr Hu Davidi Avahacha Delav Lachi Avidi Lo. There's a fundamental difference between the case in Hilchos Shabbos and the case in Sukkah. In a case in Shabbos, we would say Pitikra Yor V'Sosem because that Aksadra, that overhang there, is made. The different parts of that structure is made to enclose that which is within. But in the case of the Aksadra in Sukkah, where you just have a porch, what was the porch made for? The porch is made to service the building, that U-shaped building. It's not that wasn't put there for the sake of creating an enclosure to create a sukkah. So maybe we only apply the principle of Pitikra Yor V'Sosem when the structure that's in place was put there for the deliberate purpose of enclosing the area within. So the case in Hilchos Shabbos, Rava could even concede that we would say Pitikra Yor V'Sosem. But when it comes to Sukkah, at least in our case, we would not say Pitikra Yor V'Sosem because the Aksadra was not made to enclose that area between it, but rather it was just made as an extension of the structure that is on the outside of the Sukkah. So that is how we can make things a little bit more complicated. And I think it's always just very instructive, because it always looks like two people could be in agreement on something, but if you get to the heart of how they reach their conclusions, you could see the nuances and how they might not agree on certain issues the same way you might think. It's always fascinating. Okay. Everything we said last week and everything we said up until now vis-a-vis Abaye and Rava, Besura Masi L'Hashmaisa B'Hai Lishna. This was how, this is a theme we're seeing. This is how it went down in Surah. This is how they recorded the Machlokes in Surah. But Bepumbedisa, where there was another major yeshiva, Masni Sichich Al Gabe Aksadra She'ein La Petzimin Divrei Hakol Pesula. So let me just say this outside maybe before seeing it more inside. In the previous version of the Gemara, everyone, basically we had a machlokes. Everyone agreed that if you have the petzimin, you have the columns within 3 tefachim of each other, both Rav and Abaye agree it works. Even Rav is okay. The machlokes was when there is no petzimin, do we say Pitikra Yor V'Sosem? Now the Gemara is saying, no, actually, if there's no petzimin, there's no discussion. The whole machlokes Abaye and Rava is not about Pitikra Yor V'Sosem. It's only about whether we apply lavud when there are petzimin. Yeshla petzimin, Abaye amar keshera, Rava amar psula. Abaye says it's good, Rava says it's bad. Okay, well, Abaye is very easy to figure out. Abaye amar keshera, Amri and lavud. Well, all the petzimin are within 3 tefachim of each other, so we apply lavud. No major chiddush over here. But the question that we have to ask is, why is lavud not good enough for Rava? So it's going to be the same principle we saw earlier. Rava amar psula, lo amrin and lavud. Now, why don't we say lavud? So Rashi says, Dibur Maslav Rava Amar Psula. The lavud, you could try to find it if you want, it's further down in the Yama. The lavud la mechitzahi, el halach Moshe Sinai gemirila. Because what is lavud? Lavud isn't naturally a wall on its own. There's gaps in the wall. The only reason we regard these two semen as being connected is due to a special halacha Moshe Sinai. A deus ex machina, if you will. So then the question is, when does this halacha Moshe Sinai apply? So Rashi says, same idea as before in the Gemara. Rashi's inferring from there. that when does halacha Moshe of lavud work? Similar to what we said, when the lavud is connecting something that was put down for a certain purpose. Again, we run to that same issue. The petzimin now are not put down for the purpose of creating a sukkah. They're not put in that U shape to enclose the area between them. The petzimin are there to hold up the echsadra structure, which is part of the building, which is outside of the sukkah. So the halacha Moshe Sinai, a quirk in it, is that lavud will only work to create an enclosure if the physical parts of that fence or enclosement are meant to actually enclose the inner part that you intended for, as opposed to enclosing the building area, which is on the outside. I'm sorry I can't point to a picture in front of me, but either you have it in your mind or you flip the page somewhere in Art Scroll. I think they give you a nice picture of it. Make sense? It's the same principle again. It has to be, these halacha Moshe as Rava say, come with a big asterisk, that it needs to be for the intended purpose of the structure. That's where the halacha Moshe helps us. Okay. And then the Gemara tells us the Hilchos HaKlish Nakama, but forget everything we just learned within the past 5 minutes. Really, the original machlokus is what is accepted. So the original machlokus again was that everyone agreed that when there are petzimin, it is kosher, and Rava only says when there's no petzimin, then we don't say pitikri or visosim. We pass like Rava, so which means it would seem the Gemara is telling us halacha l'maisa that if you have petzimin that are within 3 tefachim of each other, you can use lavud. But if you don't have petzimin, we would not say pitikra yored visosim. Okay, at least when it comes to sukkah. Maybe Shabbos would be different, or maybe it's not fundamentally different between Shabbos and Sukkah, but it's about the intention again. Okay, very good. Story time. No, not really. It's not much of an agadata. Just an instance that brings out the halakhic ruling. Don't get too excited. Right? Remember when we did Megillah, we had all the stories that had, remember we went for blot after blot after blot of like story time with Mesachus Megillah. So all right. So let's do this. Rav Ashi ashkechel Rav Kahana to komisachich al gabe achsadra. So Rav Ashi saw Rav Kahana was doing basically what we discussed in the Gemara. He put schach on top of an achsadra. She'ein la pitzimin, that did not have the pitzimin, did not have those columns. Ooh, this is a big no-no, because we just paskined like Rava, who says that you need the petzimin. So how is it a kosher sukkah then? Where are your walls? So Amar Le, Los Amar Had Amar Rava, Yesha petzimin keshera, Ein la petzimin psula. You don't have petzimin. How is it a kosher sukkah? So the case here is there's already 2 clear walls, and the question is, how does he get to a third wall? So one opinion is Chavile. Near mifnim ushava mibachutz. You can see it on the inside, but on the outside, from the outside perspective, you would not see that additional part of the wall. Okay, so as long as from the inside you see 3 walls, you should be fine. The next part of the Gemara is going to require more explanation. We'll learn the Rush in a moment, but let's just read it first. Inami near mibachutz. Ushava mi bifnim. It's equal, you don't really see. It's kind of like built into the wall of the house that it's by, or the echsadra that's by, from the inside perspective. But from the outside, you can see that there's a wall. There's at least a tefach which is jutting kind of behind the sukkah. So you're going to ask, why does that work? Inami near me b'chus shami b'fnim. The itmar near me b'chus shami b'fnim nida mishum lechi hani b'tzimin, and it works because it is a lechi. Now let's remind ourselves. Anyone remember what a lechi is? So a lechi is
for the Eruv.
For the very good. So Phyllis says, it's funny. We use the term lechi today when we're talking about like the telephone wires. So right when we use the telephone wires to create a Tzuras HaPesach, sometimes the wires are not passing over the pole, so we need to make a lechi, so that way you have the, basically the mashkov, the mezuzah, and you have the tzuras pesach. So what's going on? But here, this is very odd, because I don't need a lechi, right? What's the point of a lechi? A lechi is when you have, let's say, a mavoy, okay? We've talked about mavoy many times, and we'll continue talking about it. A mavoy is this alleyway, for lack of a better term, and it is like, it leads into the Rosh Hashanah. So we want to make it clear that the mavoy is a distinct domain, and the Rosh Hashanah is the Rosh Hashanah, and you don't just carry from one to the other. So you have two options. You can either put a pole on top called a korah, or you can put a lechi, which is just another pole, maybe it could be even thinner than a pole, which would be on the side, which would remind you not to carry between the mavoy and the Rosh Hashanah. So what's the point of a lechi? Well, the lechi actually is only there as a symbol. You see, a mavoy already has three walls. The alleyway has the three walls already. But here, in this case of, what was his name? Rav Ashi visiting Rav Kahana, the sukkah only has two walls, and we need a third wall. So how does it help to put the third wall kind of like behind it, in which it doesn't really enclose the sukkah? What's going on over here? So this is what we're going to explain. Let me flip to the rush. It won't be in the back of the art scrolls, I'm willing to bet. But let me just, where did I put my bookmark? Right, I think it's worth it for me to read the lashon of the rush. It's nice to see the actual lashon. You see, these Oza Hadar Gemaras, they put so much in the back, it's hard to locate anything, because they Baruch Hashem, they pack it with so much. Here we are. Okay. So the Rush asks as follows: Ukasha, ma inyan mavoy l'sukkah? What is the comparison between a mavoy, which only requires a lechi, and a sukkah? But mavoy ika gimel mechitzos v'lo be'inan lechi el kira ba'alma. The lechi is not creating another wall. You already have your three walls. You just need it there as a symbol to remind you not to carry in between. Hilkach sagi benir mi b'chutz shami b'fnim to akira kol sagi. So there, it's enough if the lechi can only be seen on the outside and not on the inside. We could say that's sufficient because it's not there to make a wall. Aval b'sukkah dofen shlishi tzarich liyosi yoshi b'sukkah. If you're sitting inside the sukkah, you need to be enclosed by three walls. If I don't see a third wall there, there's no third wall. Sukkah, all I have is two walls. Now you might think to say the chitema dariyamigu to mahani l'shabbos. Mahani nami l'sukkah. So maybe the same way this works when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos for a mavoy. We had this migu we learned, I think it was on Daf Zion, maybe somewhere around there. So we had like this general comparison between the laws of Shabbos and the laws of Sukkah. So you might think to say the same way it could work for Shabbos. It could work for Shabbos in Hilchos Mavoy. It would work for Sukkah as well. But Lav Milsahi. But this is an issue because there, the lechi only works on a durabanan level to solve a durabanan problem. But here, when it comes to sukkah, and the Gemara even points out this distinction in the past, we need a sukkah to operate on a doraisa level. So it's not sufficient to, it's a principle like in Kabbalah Chom, where it's a dayalovim and adin lios kinidon. You can't, if I'm trying to infer a law from A to B, I can't learn more from to B than exists with A. If A only operates at a durabanan level, the lechi only works at durabanan level, I can't extrapolate it to sukkah to solve a doraisa level issue. I just don't. There's not enough ammo over there. It's not enough. It's not potent enough. So what's the answer? So the Rush says, "V'ishlomer demairi gisha asat tzuras apesach l'dofen hashlishis." This is actually, you have to kind of put in a few words of explanation over here, that really what he's doing is with the third wall is he's creating a tzuras hapesach, like we just talked about. He's making a door frame. And he's going according to the Shita, and Rav Kahana is consistent. Rav Kahana said, apparently it was on Zion Amud Aleph, that when you need a tzuras hapesach, would solve Midoraisa Sagila Bahachi. That Tzuras Pesach encloses an area even on a Doraisa level. And the only reason that we cannot suffice with a Tzuras Pesach alone, you need a physical additional tefach. You need tefach shochek, where remember that whole mechanism where basically you have something that's a little bit more than a tefach, and you situate it like 2.9 tefachim from the wall, and that way 2.9 to lavud, and then your tefach is a little bit more than it's a little more than it's a little more than a tefach, and then you basically get 4 tefachim out of it, and then you have a majority of a wall, and then includes the area. That whole mechanism, if you remember it, was all on a Durabanan level, but on a Doraisa level, the Tzuras Pesach is sufficient. Oh, beautiful. So since we have a Tzuras Pesach operating on a Doraisa already, so then the only issue we have to obviate here is on a Durabanan level. Hilkach. So now, since we're back to a Durabanan level issue, we can extrapolate from the laws of Shabbos the same way that Tefach would work for Shabbos. This Tefach would work here, even though it's not scrutable from the inside. So that's how the Rush solves the issue. Basically that line, I read it over and over again, and then I realized I wasn't the only one who was confused with that line in the Gemara. The Rush was troubled by it, and I was glad that he provided us an answer as well. And I think, just turning back to the Gemara, we have made sufficient headway on Yud Aleph. We are halfway down. I need to leave something for us to learn next week. I understand next week is Thanksgiving, and people have plans. Unfortunately, there's something going on every other night of the week here at the shul. So generally I try to move things, but I can't. So I'm going to give this year at 7. If you're at a Thanksgiving Suda, I totally understand. It'll be recorded. Maybe the folks at your table want to hear a Gemara shir. I don't know. But I won't be offended. Everyone has their schedules. So it's not that much we're covering anyway. We already got halfway down Yud Aleph, so it's not going to be a lot of catching up, and I'll have it recorded. By the way, does everyone know where to find the recordings if you ever want to listen? Like, do people have access to it? I put it on YouTube, and I put it on YU Torah. You have access to one of those probably. If anyone wants to get access to the archives you missed this year, I'll email me and I'll send you the link. It's out there. Okay, wonderful. Good learning together, everyone, and wishing everyone a good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Take care.